part 4 of my video series on building the Doepfer Polyphonic Modular. Although it's been a while since I've updated this series, I've been busy in the background making some changes to my Polyphonic Modular, and I've got some very exciting news from the world of Doepfer in terms of a very important update. First, let's take a look at some of the changes I've made to my Poly system. Originally, I had my Doepfer Poly module patched up in a single tip-top Mantis case, and now I've added a second Mantis case, which gives me more room for support modules and more room for controllers. I've added some modules, so that's changed the overall architecture of the synth. Firstly, I've added another one of the Doepfer Polyphonic envelopes. This new envelope is now controlling the VCA, and this means that my previous envelopes are each controlling their own filter, one for the low-pass filter and one for the multimode filter. So this brings my total number of envelopes for the system up to 3. At the end of the signal path, just before the effects, I've added one of the new Doepfer stereo morphing type filters. This allows me some tonal shaping over the entire sound of the polyphonic instrument. So the full architecture of the new layout is essentially 2 sets of full polyphonic synth voices. On the top row, I've got one of the Doepfer polyphonic oscillators patched into their polyphonic low-pass filter and then headed into the crossfader, and on the bottom row, I've got one of the Doepfer polyphonic oscillators patched into 4 of the 1-2-1 multimode slimline filters and then patched into the crossfader. The crossfader is controlled manually, and then from there, the 4 outputs of the crossfader go into the stereo mixer, which allows me to pan voices in stereo. The output of that mixer then goes into the A-191 stereo morphing filter, and then from there goes into the Effects Aid multi-effects processor. Later on, we'll take a look at how all of this functions together, but first, let's look at the big news of the day, the big Doepfer update. At the end of 2022, I was very happy to hear from Doepfer's software team that they were working on an update for the A-190-5 Polyphonic MIDI to CV converter. I was lucky enough to be sent a test version of the software just to give it a spin, and I can say that it was very, very easy to install using the front-mounted USB jack, and so far seems to be running perfectly with no hiccups or bugs. This is the version number that you see in the leftmost screen, which is also the save menu, once you've installed this particular update. I can't say whether or not this is going to be the final version of the software, but let's take a look at what some of the new update brings. Using the plus and the minus buttons and paging to the right. This takes us through the re-trigger menu and on to the MIDI channel menu. Next we see the reference note menu, which lets us change octaves or transpose the whole interface. The newly added portamento menu lets you create polyphonic portamento right from your MIDI keyboard. As I play the keyboard, I'll change the portamento values.
Wow.
MIDI pitch band. Now when you send MIDI pitch band messages from your keyboard or software, the interface will send those pitch bands on to all of the oscillators. The pitch band menu works in semitone steps and lets you change the range of pitch band from just one semitone all the way up to a whopping 60 semitones. I'll increase it as I play. Having previously emailed Doepfer about making changes to the way that poly playing works, I'm happy to see that they've added a new poly mode called Poly Mode 2. The original behavior, now called Poly Mode 1, works by assigning all single lines to the first voice, and then as you play more than one key at a time, it'll use the second, third, and eventually fourth voices. The new Poly Mode 2 cycles through the voices from 1 to 4 and back to 1, so even if you're playing just single lines or sending a single note arpeggiator, it's always calling up new voices in your polyphonic patch. This is very effective for creating polyphony just like a regular keyboard, because notes that have a long release time will continue to sustain in the background, and new notes will be assigned to a different voice. And finally, we see the 4 menus for the row D outputs. This is where you would assign different types of controllers to each of the 4 different outputs, making the interface very, very flexible. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this update to my Doepfer Poly Modular system. Next time around, we'll take a look at the full system in action. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, modulate that little bell, and consider joining my Patreon to help me make more weird music and more videos. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.